They say not all wars begin with gunfire. Some start with something far simpler. In my case, the battle line was drawn with a single brush stroke. I can still picture it clearly, standing on my front porch, paintbrush in hand, the warm sun on my back as I laid down that first bold streak of crimson across my front door. It was bright, daring, and loud in the best way possible, a reflection of me. I didn't want my house to disappear into the endless row of beige, cream, and off-white that made our neighborhood look like someone had copied and pasted the same house over and over again. I wanted color. I wanted personality. What I didn't realize was that this red door would become the spark that lit a powder keg. Because 2 houses down, tucked behind a perfectly trimmed hedge and lace curtains that fluttered like watchful eyes, someone had already taken notice. Her name was Karen, or as people muttered behind her back, the self-appointed Queen of the HOA. She was the kind of woman who treated neighborhood guidelines like scripture, whose clipboard was never out of reach, and who had mastered the art of glaring like a sheriff surveying a lawless town. To me, my red door was just paint. To Karen, it was rebellion, and rebellion in her world was nothing short of a crime. The very next morning, the click of her heels echoed on my driveway like a warning bell. When I opened the door, she was standing there with the kind of expression you reserve for house fires and national emergencies. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just an accusatory finger stabbing toward my freshly painted door like she was presenting Exhibit A. "You'll need to repaint this immediately," she said in a clipped, sharp tone that carried more self-importance than actual authority. "It violates the HOA color code. Beige, cream, or off-white. Those are the only approved options. Everyone knows that." I leaned casually against the frame, giving her my most polite smile. "Karen, last I checked, the HOA doesn't make my mortgage payments. This is my house, my door, my paintbrush." Her face flushed a deeper red than the door itself. "If you don't comply," she hissed, "there will be consequences." At the time, I laughed. Honestly, I thought it was just a power play, a threat meant to make me cave. But Karen didn't bluff. That evening, as I sat on my porch enjoying a cold glass of iced tea, the neighborhood grew quiet. Then I heard it, the low hum of engines, the flicker of lights against the pavement. 2 squad cars rolled in slowly, their red and blue lights casting a surreal glow over rows of identical beige houses. My stomach twisted. Karen had actually called the police. Over a paint color. The officers stepped out with a kind of weary amusement, like they already knew this was going to be ridiculous. And sure enough, Karen was right behind them, clipboard raised high like it was a badge of law and order. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a door anymore. It was about control, power. And she was more than willing to drag the law into it to prove she held both. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, their blinds twitching like nervous eyelids. Suburban entertainment at its finest. And there I stood, right in the center of the stage, leaning against my vibrant red door, sipping my tea like I didn't have a care in the world. The older officer approached first, his expression hovering somewhere between professional and trying not to laugh. He cleared his throat. "Sir, we received a complaint about your door color." Even he couldn't keep a straight face. Karen folded her arms so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her lips were pressed so thin they could have sliced glass. "Yes, officer," I said calmly. "I painted it red. You're looking at the scene of the crime." Karen jumped in before he could say another word. "It violates the HOA guidelines. It's an eyesore, a disruption to the uniformity of this neighborhood, and completely unacceptable." "He refuses to comply." The younger officer shifted awkwardly. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we enforce laws, not aesthetic preferences." Karen wasn't ready to surrender. She thrust her clipboard into his hands like it was a court summons. "Section 14, paragraph 3, neutral colors only. He's in violation. You have to do something." The older officer sighed, flipping through the pages, humoring her more than anything. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "this is an HOA matter, not a police matter. We don't get involved in disputes over paint." You could practically see the steam rising from Karen's ears. She spun toward me, her voice trembling with fury. "Don't think you've won. I'll take this to the board. I'll take it to the city if I have to. You won't get away with this." I finally set my glass down and met her glare head on. "Karen, I said evenly. Let me explain something. This isn't your battlefield. And before you start marching into meetings and filing complaints, you should know one thing. You're not just picking a fight with a guy who painted his door red. You're picking a fight with the man who owns the land beneath your feet. The words left my mouth slow and deliberate, and the effect was instant. Karen's jaw fell open like a trap door, her clipboard slipping slightly in her grip. A soft gasp rippled through the neighbors who had gathered at the end of their driveways, wide-eyed and whispering. For years, Karen had strutted around this cul-de-sac like it was her personal empire. She barked orders, handed out citations like candy, and intimidated anyone who dared to stray from her perfect beige vision. But today, she wasn't facing a frightened neighbor. Today, she was facing the person who held the ground her little kingdom sat on. Karen stood frozen, the clipboard clutched to her chest as though it might shield her from what I'd just revealed. All that confidence she usually wore like armor started to crack right there on my porch, framed by my unapologetically red door. The silence broke when someone in the crowd whispered, "What does he mean?" "Owns the block." Heads turned toward me. Even the officers, who up until now had looked bored, leaned in slightly. Curiosity etched across their faces. I let the moment hang just long enough to feel the weight of it, then I spoke. When this neighborhood was first developed, I began evenly, the original landowner didn't sell the entire property. He sold off parcels for houses, sure, but he kept ownership of the common grounds, the roads, green spaces, and the legal rights tied to them. When he passed, those rights went to his family, and I'm his grandson, which means, I gestured calmly toward Karen's precious clipboard, the HOA she loves to wave around? It operates under me, not the other way around. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a goldfish pulled from water. That's impossible, she stammered, shaking her head. The board has full authority. We make the rules here. I didn't even raise my voice. I just met her panic with steady calm. You propose rules, Karen. But every HOA contract in this subdivision has one clause. Final authority rests with the property holder of record. That's me. The younger officer let out a low whistle under his breath. The older one rubbed his chin, trying to suppress a grin. Around us, neighbors started murmuring, the shock quickly turning into something else. Relief. For years, many of them had been living under Karen's petty reign, fined for holiday decorations, scolded for lawn ornaments, written up for trash bins left out too long. She'd made this place miserable for a lot of good people, and now they knew the queen had no crown. Karen's cheeks flushed crimson as she jabbed a trembling finger at me. This doesn't mean you can do whatever you want, she spat. There are standards, expectations. Karen, I said softly, the only expectation here is respect. You've harassed good people, bullied families, and tried to control lives that were never yours to control. That ends now. Because from today on, the HOA doesn't answer to you. It answers to me. A ripple spread through the crowd, soft clapping at first, then quiet cheers, the kind that had been bottled up for years. For the first time in a long time, the neighbors looked free. But while some celebrated, Karen's eyes burned with fury. I knew her well enough to recognize it. This wasn't over. She wasn't the kind to go quietly, and she didn't. By the next morning, she was on the warpath, knocking on doors, whispering into ears, spinning a story where I was the villain, a tyrant trying to seize power. She painted herself as the savior of the neighborhood, the last line of defense against the land baron down the street. But here's the thing about lies. They don't stand long when the truth is written in ink and stamped with a deed. I called a neighborhood meeting that same week. Not an HOA meeting where Karen and her cronies could cut people off or twist the rules. A real meeting, open to everyone. I booked the community hall, set out rows of chairs, and waited. They came. Families I'd never spoken to before, older couples, young parents with kids in tow, all of them curious, some nervous, but a lot clearly tired of Karen's clipboard rule. And right in the front row, arms crossed and eyes narrowed, sat Karen. I stood before them with a folder in my hand. "Neighbors," I began, "you deserve honesty. For too long, decisions here have been made with fear and intimidation. Tonight, I want to show you who actually holds the authority in this neighborhood, and what I plan to do with it." I set the documents down beneath the projector, one by one, Land records, inherited rights, the original developer agreements, the clause buried in every single HOA contract. As the words and signatures lit up the screen, gasps filled the room. People leaned closer. Some exchanged wide-eyed looks. Others just sat back, shaking their heads in disbelief. Karen shot to her feet like a spring. "This is outrageous," she shouted. "He's twisting everything. You can't just walk in here and declare yourself king." I didn't flinch. "I'm not declaring anything. The paperwork speaks for itself. But unlike some people," I glanced her way, "I don't want power to control. I want this neighborhood to finally breathe." That was the moment the dam broke. One by one, neighbors began to speak. The Johnsons complained about the fines they'd received for their kids' bikes left in the driveway. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke about how Karen threatened her over Christmas lights. More stories followed, each one a piece of the mountain Karen had built through intimidation. And just like that, the authority she'd held for years crumbled beneath the weight of the very people she'd claimed to protect. By the end of the night, a vote was taken. It wasn't even close. Karen was stripped of her position. Her clipboard, the symbol of her reign, was officially retired. The HOA was restructured under my oversight with new, fair rules shaped by the community itself. As I stepped out into the cool night air, neighbors shook my hand. Some hugged me, and others simply smiled. The kind of genuine smile you give when a burden finally lifts. And in the shadows, there she was, Karen. She glared at me with what little defiance she had left. But the truth was written all over her face. Her empire was gone. The red door still stood proudly, glowing in the streetlight. And so did my promise. This neighborhood would never bow to a clipboard again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more wild HOA and Karen stories. See you at the next one.